number one piece of advice is to not talk about it with a lot of people. And I say that because then you get the cloudiness of their fears and their insecurities and their jealousies, and it can really throw you off. Usually when you're pivoting, you're vulnerable because you're at a big change. I could see the feedback I would get from even some of my closest friends, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be really weird for a lot of people. Just keep it to myself, and they'll just like watch and see how it all develops. I don't even know how it's all gonna develop.
This is episode 7, a duo episode with Jen Dieas and myself. Today we're going to be talking about everything related to making large life pivots. Welcome back to the Living on Purpose podcast, a place where we discuss the importance of purpose in our lives and connect with others that have created soul-aligned offerings that build into their own personal purpose. I'm your host, Katherine Ziegler, and I'm so happy to have you here with us today. Before we get started, please make sure to turn on notifications, subscribe, rate, and review the Living on Purpose podcast. When you send me your screenshot of the review to Katherine@klzmethod.com, we will send you our KLZ Method workout for the chakras. Also, as you are listening, screenshot your favorite part and share it with us on Instagram at klz.method. I love hearing from you all and sharing your thoughts and comments. I'm super grateful to you and all of the amazing listeners here, helping us to grow the podcast and share its guests and message with more people. Before we head into the show, here is a quick word from our sponsor. 22 Club email subscription from KLZ Method is a free monthly publication that outlines all the details of the upcoming season as related through numerology, astrology, and nature seasons. It's a great way to connect into each month in order to work and flow with the energy of the season. I love getting a good sense about the tempo of the month before it begins in order to map out my intentions for the next weeks, and the monthly suggested KLZ Method membership videos add an extra layer of support. Sign up for the free email publication at the link in the show notes and immediately receive a free 5-minute meditation in your email inbox. And now let's get into this episode. Jen Dieas is a former homeless teenager turned CEO. She's a self-taught beauty entrepreneur who scaled her business nationally and then felt a calling to serve as a speaker. Jen is passionate about wellness for people and pets and can be found advocating and educating on holistic healing for both. So we have Jen here with us today. Welcome. So glad to have you. Can you share more about your background on the former homeless teenager turned CEO? Can you share a little bit about that? Because it's just such a staple part of your story.
It really is. It was definitely formidable. And when I look back, I can see the lessons and the teachings and how they've just been guiding me this whole time. When my mom and my stepdad were married until I was a freshman in high school. And when they got separated, there was 4 kids and my mom, and then my stepdad was separate, and they were going through, their own inner workings with that. And we eventually became homeless to where we were living motel to motel. So probably every few days we would move to like a new Red Roof Inn or a new Holiday Inn or, some other inns that aren't my favorite. And I really learned it was probably a year or 2 that we lived like that. And so I was always living out of a bag and I was always moving, which was a blessing in I could let things go easily usually. I wasn't as attached to like physical things, but then also problematic because I wasn't attached to things, you know?
Yeah.
But it led me to I did that for a few years, moved out on my own with my brothers and cousins and things like that. And then eventually I was 25 and I kind of dilly-dallied. I'd done a lot of bartending and waitressing and I went to beauty school. I worked at this beautiful spa in Florida and I was at the best place I could ever work. Totally underqualified, but like always hungry for mentorship and guidance and like sponge and soak it up. And I said to myself, you're going to get stuck here because you're going to get used to this money. You're going to get used to this house. You're going to get used to these cars. This is going to become your lifestyle and you're not ready for that. Whatever that means, you're not ready for that. So I had been to Chicago before on a vacation for like 3 days. And I was like, I think I'll just move to Chicago. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any contacts. I barely had a job lined up. I had like a dance job that I was hoping would work out, but kind of didn't even end up working out. And I just decided to move up here and kind of start my life away from all the baggage. Because when I was home in Florida, when I was younger, everywhere I would drive was somewhere I had lived
Mm-hmm.
all the time. People are like, "Where'd you grow up?" I'm like, "Everywhere." Everywhere here.
Yeah.
And it just, the memories were so strong at that time that I really needed to remove myself from them so that I could heal them.
Mm.
Couldn't be in them.
You
And
have to get away.
yeah, it's so funny. I'm sure we'll get to this when we talk about my 2020 move. It brought me right back there, but I was
Mm-hmm.
ready.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of fascinating how things move you in different directions, but they're all purposeful if you can step away from it and look at it like that.
I love it. And I love to being in my 40s now. I feel like you'll go through and heal something in a certain way, and then you come back around to it again. Am I healing this again? How can this possibly be? This is coming up again. But,
Mhm.
like you said, just going back to Florida and these recent years, maybe because you had more stability, maybe because you're a different version of you, you
Yep.
have the opportunity now to really open the floodgates a little bit wider and go deeper into that. So it's really, it's
You know
such an
something,
experience.
I feel like you'll totally love this. This is something that helped me in the last 2 weeks about going back to things. Honest, in my head, because I didn't have any awareness of this is okay for you to continue to do this way. I was like, man, what the fuck is wrong with me? Am I just like a glutton for punishment and
Right.
always want to learn the hard way? I recently had my human design. I'd never been on,
Mm,
I didn't know my birth time. Nobody could figure out my birth time. I ordered my birth certificate, nothing. I'm like, what the hell? Nobody
yeah.
remembers. And all of a sudden, I asked my dad one more time, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, any idea what time I was born?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, 7 o'clock." I'm like, "I have asked you 5 times." But I couldn't tell him it's for my human design because he'll be like, "Oh, you're witchcraft."
Right.
But my point is, when I did my human design, everything made sense. And she's like, "No, you're all about embodiment. For you to learn a lesson, you have to embody it. You have to feel it all the way through, or you won't fully learn it." I was like, "Thank you. I really
What
love that."
what is your human design?
A projector.
Mm,
So
yeah. Yeah, projectors need to feel invited into
yes, I
the
just learned
feeling.
this about
I
myself,
know.
and it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Okay, let's move forward in your story because I love that story. It's such a powerful groundwork piece for what happened then. So then you're in Chicago, you build this amazing business.
When I came to Chicago, the first thing I did was try out for a professional dance team because
Mhm.
that was how I made friends before. I was 26
Mhm.
and I was still like, I still had a little shelf life left for that. So I did that and it was awesome. I made the team and then I made this core group of friends. And so I was like, okay, I finally like, I got a little bit of roots here. It was only a couple weeks. And 2 weeks before our home opener, I did the best high kick of my life and snapped my ACL.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh my God, but it was a beautiful blessing because it forced me to sit because I had to get surgery and repair it. And then you do the rehab. And that's when I came up with the idea for my business. I was
I
like,
love it.
what would make me feel better? I feel disgusting. One leg's half small, the other one's normal. I can't walk. I wish somebody could come spray tan me in my house. And then I went on my boyfriend's computer at the time because I didn't have a computer. And I was like, honey, people do this in Los Angeles because LA was kind of like where everything would start. LA and Australia for spray tanning. And it's like, I should do that. That would be really fun. And I was just bartending at the time, so I didn't have a job that I was like connected to. And that was the perfect job because I could be so flexible. So
Yeah.
I would get a lot of clients that were moms in the beginning, and I could go, I'm like, okay, what time's your nap time? We're gonna do it. And that was be how I would like plan my day. And 15 years later, I have a storefront in Chicago. I've been a shop owner. I was telling you before, I realized I've been a shop owner for 12 years. I'm like, oh my God, 5 states, which is always was always the dream. So it's been cool to see it happen. I'm like, wow, you've done what you said you were gonna do.
It's so cool. And I mean, you've lived it and done it and grown it and all those kind of things and watched yourself shift in your own confidence and all those kind of things, right? You're now a motivational speaker because you're able to support people in these kind of ways. And I can't imagine what that feels like in all of that. But the real cool thing about it too is being able to make people feel better about themselves. Like you said, the things that make you feel good about yourself, we talk about this in episode 2. When you feel your most you, when you feel good, how do you feel good? And I share this as ways to come into your authentic purpose are just to start by what feels good. A lot of the times people make these goals and they're like, I want to do this and I want to be here and I want to do that. And it's like, okay, well, how does that feel? Okay, it feels very obligatory. It feels very stressful and whatever. But so how do you want to feel? Like you're doing these things because you want to feel what? I want to feel freedom. I want to feel inspired. I want to feel happiness. I want to feel like I can do anything. So it's a spray tan, but you're really giving people just that immense sense of feeling good. They look at themselves in the mirror and they just feel good.
Was always I always knew from a young age I wanted to be like a helper.
Mm-hmm.
I would say my dad's a pastor, so I got to watch that my whole life. I got to watch him, kind of heal through spoken word and being by people's side. And then my mom went to prison. That's after we were homeless for a while. Eventually, she went to prison and then we scattered. So I got to watch her kind of move through the world in her own way. And it was such polarity
Mm,
that I
yeah.
was like, wow, there just are a lot of flavors to life. And they all have a purpose. They all teach you
Mm-hmm.
something magical. People are light and dark. People have
Mm-hmm.
both aspects. People aren't bad. Even my mom, there was a lot of really terrible things that happened to us through those experiences. But I've finally been able to, after having a coach for myself for 11 years, working through those things, I'm like, well, what would you do with a secretary's salary in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
4 kids?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I would go down that same path, but I could understand, like, man, if you didn't have resources or any other aptitude to think there's got to be some other way,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a really hard road to go on.
Mm-hmm. In 2020, with COVID and owning a storefront in Chicago, that was not set up to succeed in that year, was it?
Yeah, it sure wasn't. And before 2020, I was married before to a really great man, and he was very into politics. And at the time, I was very not. Like, I was
Mhm.
just like, I don't want to know. I'm Cuban. We don't trust any of those people. I'm sorry, I can't get involved in the circus. That's really how I
Yeah.
feel about it. But when 2020 came, I was like, they can do that? They can
Yeah.
wait a minute. Hold on, because I didn't
Right.
know. Jump me down, but then still make me pay 8, 9, $10,000 a month in bills. And so
Mhm.
then I saw this whole world that I built up for myself from being homeless. I was like, I'll never have to like be scrounging for money because I saved it like a little squirrel.
Mhm.
I had no debt before 2020, none. I'd never taken on debt for my business, nothing. I had only
Mhm.
said, okay, we can grow this much. Now we can make this move. We can
Right.
grow this much. I was just very conservative with money because money had always been a pain point for us.
Mhm.
So when this happened in Chicago, I was like, oh, hell no. You're telling me I have to just drain all the money that I've literally almost killed myself to make? I mean,
Mhm.
so I went through lockdown. We opened back up. My business model was obliterated because we're spray tan. It's a luxury. It's
Mhm.
not like when people don't have their hair done for 4 months and they feel like a gargoyle. It's not like
Right.
it's a
Right.
luxury. It's like you'll do it for a wedding, a vacation, something big. No one was traveling.
No one was getting married.
Right?
Right.
Like this is going to be. I knew this when we got shut down, and I didn't know anything about anything. I was like, this isn't going to be 2 weeks. No way. I just don't feel like
Same.
intuitively that's going to happen.
Totally. I felt the same way.
I'm not any wiser than anyone else. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that's not true.
Yeah.
And I remember crying. My girls were there. They're like, Jen, it'll only be 2 weeks, my employees. And I'm like, no, it won't.
Yeah.
So finally, we kept sitting there, if you remember, press conference every couple days to nothing.
Mhm.
Shamed. We will take your license if you open your doors. But I'm like, wait a minute. I can go to Lowe's and they can have 200 cars in the parking lot.
Mhm.
Everyone's this close. So you can't tell me I can't do 2 people an hour and just not have to deplete all the savings I just killed myself to make
Mhm.
12 years.
Mhm.
That's not cool.
Mhm.
No. So I started going online and doing like virtual summits and anything I could do to keep my friends, all my friends own businesses to keep us
Mhm.
all engaged. I'm like, I can't offer you advice because I can't offer myself advice. I don't know what the hell's going to happen,
Right.
but I can offer you myself.
Community.
Everyone was doing tie dye. I have never tie dyed in my life, but I had all of these sweats that people wear after tans if they don't wear the right clothes and they're black. And I'm like, well, this is March to June. By the time we open, we're not going to need the sweats.
Mhm.
Right? So I put on Facebook, I was like, let's do a tie dye party tonight. I did it in my bathroom of my apartment and like fumigated myself. I was like, this is really hard. I
This is
feel
toxic.
then I started people I would post them and people were like, will you make me one? And I'm like, yeah, what else am I gonna do? Of
Right,
course.
right.
And then all these people started DMing me, will you make me one? Will you make me one? And I'm like, I won't make any of you anything. So I started doing it at the shop in the hair sinks. And then I
Yeah,
would line out like plastic on the floor. And I got this whole system for my tie dye hustle.
I
I
love
would
it.
go to people when they would be done because then we didn't have a washer and dryer. So I'd have to carry it to my apartment in trash bags,
My
wash
gosh.
and dry it, fold them up, and then I would hand deliver them because I was getting my walks and I was like, no, you're not taking my walks. Don't care.
Hmm.
Not doing it. And
Hmm.
so I would go and walk to their apartment and buzz. Nobody wanted to be by each other. So I'm like, your stuff's down here. And they're like, cool.
Right.
And it was just like that one fun moment we would have for a day.
Yeah.
Eventually, when we reopened, like Steph would drive with me and we'd drive and we'd honk and they would still be 6 feet distance. We're like, here you go. And they're like, cool.
I love your bio. For a while, I think that you had in your bio hope dealer.
Yeah.
That's like one of the actual moments of literally dealing hope, like just hope, fun, whatever, in a sweatsuit.
Yep. I had lost faith that we would be open again. I was
Hmm.
like, I think these people are lying. And then you could see what they were doing in other states. There was kind of like a flow to it.
Hmm.
Anything that happened in Cali happened to us 3 to 4, 5 weeks.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was the decision to make the van was literally a month before we reopened. I was like, I don't believe these people. I got to go live my life again. I'm not going to sit here on hold.
Yeah.
You just don't get to have that control over me. I don't
Right.
get that. And
Yeah.
I'd seen all the van lifers. And I'm like, that's really cool. My grandparents used to travel in a little VW and it was so cute.
I
I was
love
like,
it.
I should just build a van. If we reopen, I'll figure it out,
Hmm.
whatever. But I still knew that there'd probably be another year of restrictions. So when it matter? And it worked out.
So tell us how that came to be. Looking back, it's just like, oh yeah, then she built a van. But how did that actually come in? You were talking about the clairs. And before you tell us this story, I just want to review really quickly. There are 5 different clairs. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. It's like you literally are seeing this intuitive concept or guidance. Clairaudience is the ability to receive sounds and messages inaudible to the wider world. Clairsentience is defined as clear feeling, so just like a body, a literal embodiment or feeling of the truth or that something wants to happen. Clair, I'm probably going to say this one wrong. Clair alliance is clear smelling and describes the ability to detect odors that have no physical source. Clair gustance is the physical ability of taste. Those who are gifted with strong Claire Gustance abilities are able to taste different substances without the presence of anything in their mouth at that time. So there's 5 different Claires. And for me personally, I do sometimes feel that Claire alliance where I can just smell something's not right. And yours, you said, is more of the clear hearing. You really just hear.
I hear my own voice being like, hey, this is what we're doing now. So even with the van, I remember I was in my little studio apartment laying in my bed and I was like, you're gonna get a van and go live in a van. And I remember telling myself, are you fucking serious? What are you doing next?
Right.
Okay, but also I have so many questions.
Right, right. It's like the two sides of yourself connect, like your mind, right? Your
Huh?
spirit, and then this other version of yourself that's kind of like, here's what we're gonna do. And it's like, can we have a quick huddle about this?
I'm
Can
gonna
we have a
I have a
meeting?
lot of questions again.
I love it.
And I just knew because that's intuitively how I had made all my big decisions was like
Right,
I heard one day we're gonna move to Chicago. And I'm like, okay. And everyone's like, you're gonna do what?
right.
I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out. And it worked out.
Hmm.
So yeah, for me it seems to be clear audience.
Hmm. It's really important because, I always share that our body is a high precision tool for our soul to
Yep.
communicate the guidance, right? So we have this tool. It's just like a microphone, it's whatever. It's a tool to decipher these messages. I want the audience to know, especially if there are people that are new to this, in this intuitive study and how do you connect with that intuitive side of yourself, it might be different than somebody else's. You might go through phases of it. You might have some ways that you really smell things and other ways that you close your eyes and you just see something or you
Yep.
hear something or you taste something, whatever it is. The physical body is so amazing. It's the emotions and the senses are the ways that you will really come into a deeper understanding of yourself. And I love what you shared about that process for you, how you got the message and then immediately your mental side, your ego and your mind is like, hang on a second. And that's not bad. That's how
No.
we bring it down. So, when you have these senses, of course you need to discuss it. How can you put anything into action if you just leave it out there in the sense realm? Pull it into the cognitive mind, make a plan of action, and continue to pull that guidance however you can pull it. Personally, I like to, cast out for, ask for, ask for, ask for, and then go sit in stillness and wait for it to come in one of those ways. So everyone's path and everyone's way is kind of different. But this is just a quick opportunity to kind of cover those because you heard this, you heard the voice, you questioned it with your mind.
I do want to touch on, because you brought up those different types, visually seeing my future, like the end. I've always been able to do it with
Yeah.
everything I've ever done. I could always clearly see it in my mind
Mhm. Mhm.
and then work backwards.
Mhm.
It was no different. I heard that and I'm like, oh my God, really? It was more of a curiosity, like, are you for real?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like
And
interesting, right?
it was. And I was like, I have to trust this because it's never let me down to do this.
Mhm.
These decisions based on these knowings. And but there was some times where I'm like, how am I going to tell people? Because
Right.
people had the exact reaction that I thought, what are you doing? You're abandoning
Right.
your business. You need to stay there and fight for your business. I'm like, what you don't understand is I am. I'm
Mhm.
just moving in a different way.
Mhm.
I'm not going to sit in an environment that feels horrible and beat my head against the wall. And that's how it felt. I'm
Yeah.
going to go do this. I'm going to allow this time to do whatever it needs to do,
Mhm.
and then I'm gonna pick back up and see where we're at because I
Mhm.
am not in control. Only
Mhm.
control myself, but I'm not in control.
The other thing that I liked about this part of your story is that you maintained feeling good. Like we were just talking about, like that's one of the major ways of manifesting your own life is to go where you feel good. So start with that. We were talking about this before we came on. So
Mhm.
I love that you just recognize this is not going to be a place that I can sustain myself financially, energetically, in any kind of way. This is not sustainable. So I need to go somewhere else. Whether you recognized it mentally or whether your intuition was just like, "Hey, this is the bad deal here. We got to head out."
I had made a promise to myself a long time ago when I kind of left my hometown that I was never going to stay in environments that didn't feel good to me.
Mm.
Didn't matter what the circumstances were.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was a moment where I was like, you got to keep that promise to yourself
Mhm.
because, you can't break promises to yourself. That's what I've learned.
The goal is to not accept not feeling good. It's your birthright. You came into this life feeling good. You didn't come in with all these obligations and stressful situations that, society puts on us, our mind puts on us. And so starting from that pure essence of your you-ness is just so essential.
And for me, for someone with the background that I had, I didn't necessarily have that instilled in me that I deserved to feel amazing because
Mm,
there've been so many times where I didn't. But
yeah,
once I created a life for myself and realized
right.
that I do have a certain amount of control over myself and how I feel,
Mhm.
I was like, oh, well, I've got to do that now.
So you get the message about building the van and you immediately go after, or how does it kind of shake down? I watched this happen, but
You
share
did.
with me. That was so cool.
So we were closed for 3 months and then we reopened sometime mid June. And I kind of gave myself until the end of our busier season, which was like through September. And I just had that in my mind. So I just started taking the steps. I got rid of my apartment. I gave away all my stuff. At that time, I had bought like the cutest new pink couch and like I had collected these things that I really loved, but I didn't want to barter with anybody. I didn't want to, I was like, nope. People
Mhm.
have passed things down to me before and it's been life changing. I'm going to do the same. It's going to come around another time.
Mhm.
So I just started offloading my stuff. I moved into a friend had a like a brownstone house with a basement apartment.
Mhm.
And the basement apartments here are like amazing. So I started asking around. I said, "Hey, I was trying to save money. Do you think there's like Airbnbs or people with apartments that nobody's really renting right now? Maybe I could get it for like half."
Mhm.
I was just like troubleshooting.
Mhm.
Needed to save dollars based on
Mhm.
the rent and my living expenses. She's like, I have one in my basement. And then it turned out I ended up moving there with both dogs. And then it turned out that they had a little girl at home and they were both parents working from home,
Mhm.
3.5, which does not equal working from home. You can't
Yeah.
do that with 3.5-year-old. I was like, well, hey, my schedule is super open right now because we're not seeing any clients.
Right, right.
You're just tie-dyeing to like keep that momentum going and figure out how to make more money. It's like, what if I like barter? Because she wanted me to stay for free. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I just don't operate that way. And I said, what if I watch, Hazel for a couple hours a week when you guys need me?
Mhm.
feel amazing.
Oh
And
my gosh.
she was the first one of my gurus.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, she was like my first one. She was like, "Here, I'm gonna remind you of who you really are and what
Beautiful.
your nature is." And I was like, "Cool."
I
And
love it. Yeah, I love it. I remember seeing those days when you would spend time with her and just so sweet, right? And just so innocent. It really how could it not bring you back to that, right?
it was so cool because it worked out so organically, so
Mhm.
naturally. Like nothing was planned. We were
Right.
all, you remember that time? We were all
Yeah.
just like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what's
Mhm.
hoping for the best.
Mhm.
Unless you were just somebody who could hunker down and be like, no, this is fine for me. That just
Mhm.
wasn't my path. But I learned quickly, I was like, oh, this is going to help you integrate. Because, in between motels when I was homeless, I would stay with my friends in their house for a couple of days. But I was always this guest that wanted to be like not seen or heard. I almost wanted to be invisible.
Mhm. Mhm.
I just didn't feel comfortable. I was really grateful to be there, but I also felt like I shouldn't be there. I felt like I didn't
Mhm.
belong anywhere. This
Yeah.
was like the beginning of the whole season of rewriting that story, and I
Oh,
didn't
man, that's so
know it.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. I feel that. I really feel that. So cool. So then you're staying there and then you buy a van? Like, how do you even find a van?
I was staying there, and I knew I was going to come back to Florida to build it because my stepdad is really handy. We grew up doing a ton of projects together. I had done like 8 physical build outs prior to that on salons or other
Right.
small businesses, but never on a vehicle.
Yeah, she's handy, folks.
Yeah. Oh, I love being handy. If I can figure this out, I can do anything. It'll be such great like teaching for me. And I love getting in there and seeing a
Yeah.
project come to life. So I called him. We had like a 6-hour conversation. I was like, "Will you help me?" And he's like, "Yeah, kid, get down here." He's just like a pirate. He's so funny. And the funny thing was I got down there. So I left in September. We had brought renters into the shop, kind of chopped up our business model to make it work. And so I was like, okay, we're going to be good for now because our business was sustainable enough where we could skeleton staff, rent out the rest, and kind of let things play out. And I went down to Florida and everything's open.
Mhm.
They're all like a little too busy for me, which was funny because it just took way longer than I'd anticipated. City Gen was like, I'll go down there and I'll be done in like 3 months
I know.
because I knew it was possible. But I went down there and that was not how it went.
Yeah.
All. It was this long process, but then Ziggy started getting sick and I started to learn all these things and I was like, "Oh my god, like this is just supposed to take longer."
Ziggy is her little pup that passed away just a couple months ago, right?
Yep.
So, okay, so you went down there, you built the bus, you just put it together
I went
and
up
then
there.
you
First I bought a school bus. I bought a short bus. It was this white, beautiful short bus and if you've seen inside they have these beautiful curved lines and I was like, "I need that." I went like 3 different times to go see it, and it was 2 hours away, so I bring, like, a girlfriend at the time. I went to go see it, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." I drove it, I'm like, "Feel comfortable." Meanwhile, I hadn't had a car in, like, 13 years because 'cause I'd never need one.
This is so funny.
So it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I went down there, bought the bus, brought it home, and 3 days later, I was like, "Oh, shit, I don't like the bus." It felt really exposed because you have all those beautiful windows,
Mhm.
but until you build it out, you're just I felt so vulnerable, and I was leaving such a vulnerable headspace that I was like, "Ah, I don't
I
know."
need some walls.
So I call these guys and I said, "Hey guys, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I can't keep the bus." And they were like, "Okay. I mean, you bought it." And I was like, I know. I hear what you're saying, but I can't keep it. So we're gonna have to do something because I just can't have it. It's not right for me." And they're like, "Jen, that's not really how it works. You bought it." I was like, "I know, but man, it's 2020. Can we do something here?" I
It's
messed
a
up.
year of non-conventional ways.
But, by being kindly persistent, I wasn't
Mhm.
being
Right.
bossy or heavy. I was just like, "Dude, I messed up person to person. Let's make it right." So, ended up cool because they let me return it with, like, a restocking fee
Mhm.
thing, and I was like, "That's fair. That's fair
Right.
for you, more than fair for me," and I called that my schooly school and wrote it off.
Mhm.
Went back to the drawing board because vans were always, like, the first instinct. I just fell in love with the damn bus. Went back to the drawing board. There was a shortage of vans, so I'm like, "You need to, like, get on this."
Right, you gotta be aggressive.
So I found one a couple hours away, bought it, and then started the build. And then, yeah, that took about a year off and on because I would come back to Chicago and visit
Right.
and like do the thing.
I just love the conviction that you have about it, though. It's not like, should I, shouldn't I, what is happening? Maybe I do, because you would have missed buying the van. I mean, our story is parallel. And this is, I think, maybe watching your story is something that gave me the courage to do this when we dismantled our lives last year from Chicago with two kids, in our home. For me personally, I had always wanted and seen this life for myself that was a home and security and a job and all that kind of stuff. And then it just was not aligning anymore. I think COVID kind of shook it loose a little bit. And then we stayed in Mexico for a month and we were in this beautiful outdoor space. So our kitchen was exposed, the living room was exposed, and then we had glass doors to close the bedrooms in and stuff like that. So we were essentially like with a thatch roof, we were essentially outside for a month in January. You know what I mean? And that just, we were talking about this too with nature. It just gets in you and it just takes you right back to your true essence. There's no way you can deny it. You just feel it happening. You could
Mhm.
hear we could hear the bees first thing in the morning. We could hear everything in the night. We could hear some things we didn't want to hear, you know what I mean, that are keeping us up in the middle of the night or whatever, all the parties down the street and whatever. But it was just really this powerful time for me that really made a shift that when we came home, when we have this huge house, 4 bedrooms, 4 bathroom, my whole studio fitness thing in the basement. And it's just like the first night home, it was so nice to sleep there and you feel so great the next day. I woke up and it's like I can feel the things in the cupboards and the drawers pulling my energy away, pulling my essence away from me. And driving the car is like so much nicer than driving a golf cart where you're like dusty and holding the kids down so they don't fly out the side of it. You're like, wow, this steering wheel is heated and this is so nice. But it was like I knew, like you said, I just knew that this is not a life that I can continue to grow or authentically live even in
Mm-mm.
this manner. We have to do something disruptive and it's going to suck. And it really did suck, tearing apart our life, selling everything in this home down to the rakes, literally our lawnmower and just all the things that you need in your garage. It was intense, but what comes out the other side is a deeper connection with how to source your truth, like how to find it.
Mhm.
And obviously the real trophy is being in deeper alignment with where your next step is because things just come in more naturally when you are there, right? Do
Mhm.
you feel like that happened for you once you listened to this call of like do the bus and you're kind of like, what the hell? And then you're like, okay, here we go. And then like what blessings came in as a result?
Oh gosh, I mean, so much more space to think and feel within myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like as soon as I did that, my heart opened and it was like, okay, now you can feel confident and secure to like walk this path. It was like a confidence and a groundedness that I needed within all of that movement,
Mm-hmm.
to feel really good about my decisions.
Yeah. And it's like I feel like when you're walking your walk, like you said, when you're in that, it's like you don't have to run sort of these defense tapes in your mind
Mhm.
of why aren't you doing this thing that you know you should be doing? Well, it's like you have this chatter.
What was so funny is I had been given the gift to not have that, which was a big deal because
Mhm.
normally I would like kind of battle some of those decisions. But the people around me, and especially in my work life, we had kind of patched the holes and there was different people in the mix. And I had had a certain team for 6, 5, 4 years. So it was just different. And and there was those elements coming from outside people to me. They were like,
Mhm.
I don't get what you're doing. And I was like,
Mhm.
it's just really not for anyone else to get. It's just
Good
really
for you.
me. Yeah, and that was challenging, beyond challenging.
So it's like a fortifying year for you because you see yourself doing that and you just I mean, were you shocked to see yourself standing in that much of a firm ground or did you
Yeah.
just yeah, no, it was just this is just what it is. I love it. I really, really love it. That's just so beautiful.
Thank you.
So, this episode, I really wanted to bring Jen on to talk about this because it's like the art of pivoting. And we were joking before the show started about, please, I don't want to be constantly having to pivot. Can we work on one of my other strengths a little bit? Like this is great, but how many pivots do you think that you have done?
Oh God, in life, big ones. I couldn't even say. If I tried to count them, I was like, let's count, and then I'm like, no.
No way.
I would just say it's been like one after another since I was a teenager, for
Mhm.
sure.
And what would you say if you had to write sort of you know, top 5 ways to support yourself through a pivot or top 5 ways of, whatever it would be, what would you suggest or how would you support someone else that isn't necessarily, they haven't really been living this easy to pivot lifestyle. Like a lot of people are just so much more ingrained into their belief system or their life or whatever. So pivoting isn't natural for them. What would be your dummy's guide for pivoting?
Number one piece of advice is to not talk about it with a lot of people. And I say that because then you get the cloudiness of their fears and their insecurities and their jealousies or whatever it may be. And it can really throw you off,
I love that.
especially at a time where usually when you're pivoting, you're vulnerable because you're at a big change. Something
Hmm.
different is happening. So that was something I knew pretty early on. Like I could see the feedback I would get from even some of my closest friends. And I was like, okay, this is going to be really weird for a lot of people. So I better
Yeah.
just keep it to myself and they'll just like watch and see how it all develops. I don't even know how it's all going to develop. So I would
Yeah.
say that's like a super helpful thing for me is to just keep your ideas to yourself, be quiet, make sure you have time regularly to be very, very quiet because that's when I can hear myself the most.
Hmm. Regular time on your own to hear yourself. And do you do anything specific with the plan of action? Do
I'm
you write it on a calendar or do you manifest it in some kind
I
of way?
walk it through my body. And now that human design makes so much sense.
Hmm.
Embodiment. I've always like I used to walk 26 miles a week, like a marathon a week. And I'm like, this is aggressive. Is it? I don't know. It was just my process. That was
Hmm.
if I could walk it through my body, I could totally feel it.
Hmm.
And then it stuck. And then it made sense.
And when you say walk it through your body, you mean have the concept at the beginning of the walk and then just
Let it flow from there. Whatever
completely.
comes. Yeah, I'm gonna think this thought or ask this question and walk
Yeah.
in and see what comes to me. And it always did.
I love that. I completely feel that. That's so parallel with KLZ method and moving the body because when you start moving the body, you start moving every system in your body.
Yep.
So naturally, like the ideas just start flowing. You start like coming into connection with source in different ways. I like to go out and, if I'm being completely conscious, I will set an intention at the beginning of the walk
Mhm.
and just like let it come through like you kind of said,
Mhm.
and then I will like watch for signs too. It feels like things are flowing and I know I'm connected to source at that point.
Mhm.
And so I'll ask for guidance, like show me some signs, and whether it's like a hawk or we saw some huge turkeys the other day, and I'm always like looking up what do the spirit guides mean, what are they telling me.
I had started to also, for a helpful tip, I started to make a log on my phone of
Hmm.
signs. And then if I went, sometimes they would come so fast and furious. I'm like, dude, somebody's trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
So then when I wanted to get more detailed with it, I would write down the signs. And when I wanted to take it to another level, I'd write down what I was thinking about or doing or
Yeah.
anything prior to. And it's helped me connect the dots with a lot of things.
I had a shaman that I worked with when I was doing my Reiki trainings that he suggested that, like, write down, because I had this. It was when I had this duck come to me that I knew was my late grandma Louise, my mom's mom, that passed away when she was young, and we had a whole journey together for 9 months. And so he said, when you see these things, write them down and write down what was happening in your life or what significance they might have. Because you can, owls for me have always been my grandma Z, my dad's mom. But it's interesting because they have so much more influence than just my grandma Z. Like owls are, for example, are very much a symbol of mysticism and the occult and stuff like that. So it's like when I hear them in the middle of the night, what is that telling me? And so just like you said, keeping a log of that to really learn how your guides are connecting to you deeper.
Yep.
And all the different ways. I mean, maybe you're someone that sees a penny and it is significant because it reminds you of something, or maybe you're someone that sees feathers or angel numbers. All of these different things are ways to receive this guidance and this insight, and just learning the ways that your guides connect to you or that source energy connects to you, and start to just get interested. And once you start to listen to it, more come.
Having a conversation with my coach the other day as I was driving. So staying out in Indiana and driving back. And like we were getting to the kind of the crest of this conversation. It was like a just like a charged topic, something that
Mhm.
I was really trying to work through. And at the moment of that crest, a rock hit my windshield and broke my windshield. I was like, damn. There, whoever's up there orchestrating this is like, hey girl, pay attention.
Yeah, or it's literally like cracking through. Okay, now it's released. Like sometimes those big emotions, they need to just break something, and then it's like, okay,
Yes.
we're through it now.
Yep.
Thank you for the sacrifice, windshield.
I'm sorry, windshield.
I love that. I love everything that you've shared about that. We're talking about spirit guides, and one of the ways that we shared before we started to record, spirit guides in your pets,
Yep.
and losing Ziggy and the last days with him, the signs and the messages that you received, and I just feel like it's so important to share this with the listeners that also have pets. And some people do realize how special their pets are. Obviously, they love their pets, right? But the fact that it's an opportunity to really connect into yourself deeper in the spiritual world, and once they have crossed or while they're still here, both. Can you share
Yeah.
what feels relevant to share on that topic?
I realized pretty early on when I realized he had cancer, and which was last year, the end of last year. He Something was wrong with him during 2021, but it kept being diagnosed differently. So I
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot through that. I learned a lot about the, healthcare system for pets, similar to the healthcare system for people, and I'm like, "Whoa." So it drove me down this path of reorganizing my whole life because he was my priority. I had sacrificed so much for my business for 13 years prior, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm not going to look back on this experience and regret doing it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Regret being like, no, I have to work this hard. I have to push,
Mm-hmm.
push my will. I said, no, I'm going to lean back. This is my priority. I'm going to shift things. And I'm so thankful that I did. And I was able to walk that whole journey with him because he
Mm-hmm.
taught me so much about, the healthcare systems. And then he taught me so much about myself and my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
He was really leading me back to like the truest version of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the truest version of you is nurturing and caring and loving
Mm-hmm.
and giving, but you have to be in an environment. And I think that was a big shift for me, that you can be appreciated and celebrated for that.
Yeah.
If you're that in an environment that just can't see you for that or just can't get there, you're always
Mm-hmm.
going to be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really big lesson. It was just a really big lesson for me. And I felt like tuning into him, I had to constantly try to understand what he was going through because I can't talk to
Right.
us. And it was a magical experience all the way to the end. He orchestrated everything towards the end. And I knew he was kind of like, we were at palliative care and hospice. And I learned how to give him IVs, and I was
Yeah.
like doing all this stuff. He had an energy worker, a
Mm-hmm.
chiropractor. He went to salt rooms. I mean, I traveled all over to get him different kinds of treatments, anything that I could get. Um, and yeah, it was just a really deep journey into self for me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about pets, sometimes they get dismissed as just a pet, right?
Yeah.
But it's a soul. There's a soul. And whether that soul is human or a bird or a pet or whatever it might be, there's a soul there. And so there's guidance there, and we share these experiences together, and we come together in lifetimes. We journey together and that kind of thing. So it feels like Ziggy was very much part of your journey, and you part of his as well.
Oh yeah. I learned, I got him and then 2 months later separated from my husband, not
Mm,
knowing any of that was going to happen.
yeah.
We were both managing our own separation anxiety together.
Mm.
It was just wild to
That
experience
what? Yeah.
because that was a big hurdle in the beginning. Okay, we got over that. It took like 2 years to really
Mhm.
work through that. And all the while I can see he was just helping me ground because if I wasn't grounded, he wasn't grounded. So I had to constantly
Slow down.
slow down. And I feel like that was one of the big messages, like slow down. Life is sweet. We have time,
Mhm.
but like you've got to focus on what really matters to you.
Mhm.
Don't listen to all this noise.
Because we get into this hustle culture, and I'm sure being an owner of a business, it's like you just got to go, and then once you go to go, then you got to go harder to go to harder, and once you go harder to go harder, then you got to go even harder, and just swallows you up in this masculine energy. And not that masculine energy is bad. I really get frustrated in this day and age where it's like there's this whole concept that like hustle culture is wrong, and it's not that action and motivation and creating a strategy is wrong. It's just that it's out of balance. So when you bring it back into balance by adding in some of that divine feminine energy, and divine feminine energy is not like a girl in a bikini dancing around in a sensual way. Not that it can't be.
Yeah.
Down, totally down for that. Go for it. But I just think that there's a misconception of like, I'm going to get into my divine feminine. You know what I
La,
mean?
la,
It's like,
la, la, la.
yeah, right.
My
Right.
divine feminine was the nurturing mother.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could see it so clearly. I was like, oh my God, I'm so, even though it's chaotic because there was so much confusion and research. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
when anyone's dealing with a healthcare battle, whatever being it is, it's really frustrating because you just don't know the right answers. And, but I could clearly see myself. I was like, oh my God, this is like, I have never felt so beautiful or fully feminine than I have caring for this animal.
Yeah.
Why would I not nurture that? I'm learning something at the same time. And the feedback that I was getting was like, I can't believe what you're doing. And I don't want to judge you, but it seems weird. You should be focused on your business. I'm like, no, I'm not the sacrifice. I'm the
Mhm.
altar.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not
Mhm.
my right in life is to not to just die
I know.
everyone else and
Right.
never experience love for myself or never experience peace or grounding or any of that. No.
Mhm. Right. And when you come into that nurturing role as a caretaker, you come into that receiving, you come into that, like you said, nurturing, nourishment. Things slow down and you're listening. When you come into that, like you said, there are divine masculine elements of it where you are researching and studying and going to
Yep.
appointments, but you're doing those things based on the guidance that you're receiving
Mhm.
intuitively and by listening to what Ziggy needs and all these kind of things. And so you put those things together. I just am forever going to be illustrating the balance that can happen and how when we put those two together, it's sun, moon, hatha, yin, yang, it's feminine and masculine. So it's just really beautiful when you have that put together. You're ready to roll. You're ready to rip into something. And really, for you, it was about experiencing this time. And by going deeper into this time, you really went deeper into yourself. When you go deeper into yourself, you clear out anything that's ready to release so that you can step back into another up leveled version of yourself. And how many times are we going to do this in our life, do you think?
Oh,
Does it ever end? Now you two are so forever connected as, just aligned spirits. And so now that he's on the other side, tell the audience how you feel connected or guided or supported by Ziggy.
it's really it's really a comforting feeling because I can receive messages from him now.
Mhm.
Whereas when my best friend died, and this is about 11 years ago, we went through the grief with his family and we were all so close.
Mhm.
And I could see that there's certain people that couldn't receive messages. And at the time, I didn't know why. And I didn't know why I could. And
Mhm.
it got to the point where they were really open to me relaying the messages that were coming through for me. And it was comforting to them. So it was almost like I opened that channel.
Mhm.
And with Ziggy, I think the channel was so wide open
Right.
and was so ready that it's been so frequent where I'm like, oh my God, he's up there orchestrating. He was a poodle. So he's like, hello. And he's up there like orchestrating this whole thing. And I think he knew intuitively too, I've got to go because this was so all encompassing. We could only do it for so long.
Right. Mhm.
I've got to release,
Yep.
go into my peaceful zone so that you can move on to the next level because you need to take this information and use it to help more people.
You did a lot of research and studying and a lot of coaches that supported you with animal intuitive insights, right?
That was so helpful. So before he passed when we were on the road and I was doing a speaking engagement in Dallas. And about a few weeks before, I'm like, should I go? Should I not? But something kept telling me you have to go.
Mhm.
Like, and you're not doing this selfishly. You're not doing this because you feel guilty for backing out nothing. I could clearly feel that. I was like, that's not what it is.
Mhm.
It's because you're supposed to be there. And I think I was supposed to be there because he didn't want that to happen in any of my home bases.
Mm.
You know?
Hmm. Mhm.
No, I want it to be like an autonomous place for you that you don't
Right.
have to go back to if you don't want to.
Right.
I think we both kind of were talking to each other at that time and knew that this was like the next level for us.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many other stories, but anyone in the audience that is moving through a loss of a pet or illness with a pet, Jen would be a fantastic resource to connect with for just more insight and guidance on that kind of stuff. So,
The general population doesn't always recognize pet loss as the deep of a loss as it is.
hmm
It's the one source of unconditional love. They will
hmm
always love you no matter what.
hmm
That's hard to have even with our families.
right,
I know that for sure.
yeah,
So how could it not be a devastating loss?
right,
That's why when that happened in October, it took me a month and a half for my body not to wake up because we weren't sleeping through the night the whole year because I
right,
was sick and we were having all these issues to not wake up every 2 hours in a full panic. Like it took
yeah,
a month and a half every night. I was like, okay, maybe tonight's the night. But
oh,
my body had to reset and then now
right,
my mind started to reset. And then here we are the first of the year where the hustle world is like, go, go, go. I'm like, no.
not yet. I'm gonna wait.
The trees are dead. It's freezing. My heart
Right.
is still like so tender. I'm not gonna go
Yeah.
crush it for you.
I love it. I mean, I feel like so many people are shifting from this old concept of New Year and into this whole, it's a self-authorizing experience to say, I'm not buying in. I'll be around in spring when the sun is light as it is dark. That seems more natural. And we're coming back to those rhythms and stuff. A question that I always ask to people that come on is your purpose and how you came into connection with your purpose.
Mhm.
If there's any specific story along the road, if there was any, if it was a smooth process where you really heard your purpose and you moved right on it, if it was sort of a skulky kind of thing, if you took some time, is there any, just insight that you can offer on how you experienced coming into your purpose?
Totally. My dad tells this story. I was like 5 years old in the grocery store. And again, my dad was a pastor. So I saw him for years be a space holder for people,
Mm-hmm.
strangers, for
Mm-hmm.
families when they were going through their worst times most of
Mm-hmm.
the time. So that has always felt natural to me. I'd always seen it. So that made
Yeah.
sense. You would always hug your neighbor. And he said when I was 5 years old, we were in the grocery store one time and he couldn't find me. And I'm down the aisle climbing up the shelves. There's an old man there that couldn't reach it. And I was super mad that there was nobody there to help. Like, where
I
is
love
everybody? This is your job.
it.
Little tiny girl climbing up. And I think that whatever mission that I've been on in my life was given to me, I
Yeah.
believe. And my job has just been to follow it and allow myself to follow it. And when I get off course, bring myself back to you're here to be a guide of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
a helper. I
Mm-hmm.
think about it in that way. And I think everyone's different for what they need. And the more I'm a guide for them, the more I'm also helping myself. So it's
Yeah.
super, mutually beneficial in the right context.
Mm-hmm.
It's just always laid itself out for me. Decision after decision has affirmed it.
Right.
For me, it wasn't too hard.
Yeah. And I feel like, the guests that have been on here so far have shared sort of your same sentiment that they've always had this purpose. What I think happens a lot of the times is that we don't necessarily know the modalities of the purpose. Like,
Yes.
so this is my purpose, but how will I reach these people? And then a lot of people have the how they will reach the people, but they don't have the purpose dropped in yet. So there's sort of two elements to living this on purpose lifestyle.
Yep.
And you have definitely nailed it. It's so beautiful watching your journey.
Thank you.
Oh, I love it. Thanks for being here with us today. I've just loved our time together and getting to know you more. That was episode 7. Thank you for being with us for this. Jen is just such a beautiful treasure. I'm so excited to hear how you resonated with her and what her experiences have been. We'd love to hear what your favorite part was, and feel free to ask any questions. If you love this episode, remember to share it with your friends or send it to anyone who may love this inspiration and information. Also, please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget to sign up for that free 22 Club email subscription from KLZ Method. See you next time. Sending so much love.